Why no one survives a night in this cursed hotel? There's a place out there, nestled at the edge of a forgotten town, where the old trees whisper secrets in the wind and the fog never seems to lift. They say it's an abandoned hotel, but no one's ever brave enough to check it out. Except for a few foolish souls who've heard the rumors and thought themselves immune to the whispers of the past. But even the bravest of them, the skeptics, never make it through the night. Tonight, things would be different. Or so Ryan thought. He pulled his car into the crumbling gravel lot, its tires crunching beneath the weight of time. The hotel towered before him, a broken monument to a forgotten era, its windows dark and empty. The only sound was the wind sighing through the overgrown vines that clung to the hotel's cracked stone facade. It was a dare, really. A game. A thrill for Ryan and his friends to laugh about the next day. The hotel had been closed for decades and it was said to be cursed. People had disappeared inside, vanished, never to be seen again, but who believed in curses? Who believed in old legends? They were just stories to keep the kids entertained. The grown-ups didn't care, and Ryan wasn't one to shy away from a challenge. The hotel's grand double doors creaked open as if welcoming him. It was an odd thing, how a place so obviously abandoned could still have power over you. Ryan's friends, Megan, Jared, and Tom, followed close behind him, whispering and laughing nervously. "Are we seriously doing this?" Megan asked, her voice shaking with a mix of excitement and fear. "We'll be fine," Ryan said, pushing the door open wider. "It's just an old hotel. Nothing more." The air inside hit them like a wave of cold, oppressive silence. The dim light from their flashlights flickered as they shone across the dusty lobby. The once grand chandeliers hung from the ceiling, now dimmed by years of neglect. The walls, once adorned with grand tapestries, were now peeling and faded, their edges curling like the pages of an old, forgotten book. Ryan took a deep breath, the scent of decay thick in the air. "Let's find our room and get out of here. One night. That's all it'll take." They all nodded, their nervous laughter filling the empty space. But the laughter didn't last long. The deeper they ventured into the hotel, the heavier the silence became. It was as if the building itself was waiting, holding its breath for something that was about to happen. And they, unknowingly, were walking straight into it. They found a room on the 3rd floor, room 13. It seemed fitting, considering the stories surrounding the place. Some said the hotel had been built on land cursed by a long-dead spirit. Others said it was a place where dark rituals had been performed. No one really knew the truth. All they knew was that once you entered the hotel, you couldn't leave the same. Ryan, eager to prove his courage, shoved the door open. Inside was more of the same. Old furniture covered in dust, the air thick with mildew. But there was something else in the room, something that made the hairs on the back of his neck stand up. A large mirror hung on the wall opposite the bed, framed in tarnished gold. The reflection looked off, distorted, as though the world behind him was stretching in unnatural ways. "Great," Megan muttered. "Now we're in a haunted room." Ryan chuckled, trying to brush off the unease creeping up his spine. He set down his bag and flopped onto the bed, pulling out his phone. "It's just a mirror. It's all part of the experience. I bet you guys are just waiting for some spooky stuff to happen." "I'm not waiting for anything," Tom said, crossing his arms. "This place feels wrong." "You always say that about everything," Jared laughed. But Megan wasn't laughing anymore. She stood by the window, her face pale. "Is it me or is it getting colder in here?" Ryan stood up, walking over to her. The chill in the room was undeniable now. The temperature had dropped so suddenly, it felt as though they were standing in the middle of a snowstorm. His breath came out in puffs of white mist. He glanced out the window. No snow, no storm. Just the same dense fog that seemed to crawl across the land like a living thing. The room seemed to groan under their weight, as if the building itself were waking up. Ryan turned to his friends, but they were no longer laughing. Jared's eyes were wide, his mouth slightly agape, staring at the large mirror on the wall. Something wasn't right. The reflection wasn't just distorted anymore. It was moving. Ryan's blood ran cold. At first, he thought it was a trick of the light, the flickering from the flashlight bouncing off the glass. But as he stared, the figure in the mirror seemed to move closer. A shadow, a presence, he couldn't tell if it was human or something far worse. Megan stepped back, her voice trembling. Ryan, do you see that?" But he couldn't answer. His breath caught in his throat as the reflection in the mirror smiled. It wasn't him. It wasn't any of them. It was a twisted, nightmarish version of a face, grinning and leering at them, its eyes hollow, empty. A cold voice echoed in the room, coming from nowhere, but it sounded as though it was coming from inside their heads. "You shouldn't have come here." Suddenly the door slammed shut, throwing them all into darkness. The room was silent for a beat. Then a low, grating sound filled the air, a slow scraping like claws running down a chalkboard. The walls themselves seemed to tremble as if the very structure of the hotel was alive. Jared screamed, "We need to get out of here. Now." But Ryan couldn't move. His feet were rooted to the spot, his body frozen in place. The mirror, it was calling to him, pulling him closer with an unseen force. The distorted reflection of himself, no, not himself, something darker, moved toward him, and he could feel a presence brushing against his skin, as if it were reaching out, touching him from the other side. "Megan. Tom. Help me." Ryan's voice broke, but it felt like it was swallowed by the air around him. But Megan wasn't there anymore. Tom wasn't there either. They were gone, their voices fading into the abyss as if they had never been there at all. Ryan turned, desperate, searching for his friends. But they were lost in the fog of the hotel, swallowed by the curse that had taken this place long ago. And now it was coming for him. The shadowy figure in the mirror stepped out from the glass. It wasn't just a reflection. It was real. And it was hungry.
Ryan's heart pounded as the figure emerged from the mirror. It wasn't a trick of the light, or some dark illusion. This was something real, something far older and far more dangerous than he could comprehend. The air in the room grew thicker, pressing in on him from all sides. The walls groaned as if they were alive, the floor beneath his feet shifting. His pulse raced, and his throat tightened with the overwhelming feeling that he was no longer alone in this forsaken place. The figure in the mirror, his twisted reflection, was now standing in front of him, its eyes hollow and empty. Ryan stumbled back, desperately searching for his friends, but they were nowhere to be found. The room was now engulfed in shadows, the corners of the walls curling like the fingers of a beast waiting to pounce. "Where are they?" Ryan whispered to himself, his voice barely audible over the sound of his own breath, ragged and shallow. But no answer came. The figure, no longer a mere reflection, but something more, reached out, its fingers long and skeletal, its face twisted into a grotesque grin. "You've come to stay, haven't you?" It rasped, its voice like the cracking of dry leaves. "You're just another in a long line of souls who dared enter this place. You thought you could leave, but you can never leave." Ryan's throat tightened. He wanted to scream, but no sound escaped. It was as if the very air had been stolen from his lungs. The figure's grin widened, its jagged teeth gleaming in the faint light. It stepped closer, and with each step, the room seemed to contract, the shadows growing darker, more oppressive. "You can't run from the curse," it continued, its voice dripping with malice. "You never could." Ryan's knees buckled as the reality of the situation hit him. He was trapped. There was no escape. The hotel had claimed him, just as it had claimed everyone before him. The figure's presence was suffocating, a weight pressing down on him, threatening to crush him under its sheer force. He wanted to fight back, to escape. But his body wouldn't respond. His mind screamed for action, but his limbs refused to move. He could feel the weight of centuries of darkness bearing down on him, the endless suffering of the souls who had met their end in this forsaken place. Suddenly, there was a sound, a soft, almost imperceptible scraping of wood against stone. Ryan's heart skipped a beat. He turned toward the source of the noise, his eyes straining to pierce through the suffocating gloom. A door, one he hadn't noticed before, creaked open. It was as though something, or someone, was calling to him from the other side. The figure in the mirror laughed, a harsh, bone-chilling sound that reverberated through the room. "Foolish," it sneered. "You think there is hope? There is no hope here." But Ryan couldn't stop himself. His feet moved toward the door, guided by an instinct he couldn't control. It was as though the door held the key to everything, his escape, his salvation, or perhaps his doom. With trembling hands, Ryan pushed the door open, stepping into the darkness beyond. The hallway was empty, cold and silent, with no sign of his friends. The walls, however, were covered in strange symbols, etched deeply into the wood, their edges glowing faintly in the dark. The door slammed shut behind him, plunging him into an eerie silence. He stood in the hallway, his pulse pounding in his ears, his breath shallow. The hotel felt alive, its heartbeat a steady thrum beneath the floorboards. It was watching him. Waiting. A door at the end of the hallway creaked open, the faintest light spilling out from the crack. Ryan knew, without a shadow of a doubt, that he had to go through it. It was the only way. He hesitated for only a moment, then walked toward the door, his heart beating faster with each step. He reached for the handle, his fingers icy, trembling as he touched the cold metal. As soon as he opened the door, a terrible feeling washed over him. Something was wrong. This room was different. The air was thick with a sense of malevolent history. The walls were adorned with paintings of the hotel itself, stretching out over the years, decades, maybe even centuries. Faces stared back at him, their eyes lifeless, their mouths open in silent screams. In the center of the room stood an altar, carved from stone, dark and worn. The floor around it was stained with something black, something that looked like dried blood. It was then that Ryan saw it, his friends. They were kneeling at the altar, their faces gaunt, their eyes hollow. They didn't move, didn't speak. It was as though they were trapped in some kind of trance, their bodies bound to the cursed hotel, just like everyone else who had ever entered. Ryan's stomach churned. "Megan! Jared! Tom!" he screamed, but they didn't react. They were beyond his reach, their souls lost in this wretched place. Then, out of the corner of his eye, Ryan saw something that made his blood run cold. In the shadows of the room, a figure stood. It was tall and cloaked in darkness, its features hidden from view. It didn't move, but Ryan could feel its presence, its gaze fixed upon him, weighing him, judging him. It was the hotel's keeper, the thing that had held this place in its grip for so long. The source of the curse. The one who made sure no one ever left. "You shouldn't have come," the figure whispered, its voice like 1,000 whispers echoing in the back of his mind. "Now you belong to me." The room began to shift, the walls closing in on him, the floor trembling beneath his feet. The paintings on the walls seemed to come alive, their eyes following his every movement. Ryan stumbled back, desperate to escape, but the room was moving, changing. The door slammed shut, trapping him inside. He had crossed the line. The moment he set foot in the cursed hotel, he sealed his fate. The hotel wasn't just a building, it was a living entity, one that fed off the souls of those who dared to enter. And now, Ryan was its prisoner. Forever.